Hello and welcome. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Let's begin with our top story this morning. No need to test if you are asymptomatic. No need to test if you're traveling domestic. No need to test even if you have come in contact with a positive patient. In fact, no need to test unless you are from a at-risk nation. If you're traveling from there, basically do not test till the time you yourself are a high-risk person. That is, people who are older, people with comorbidities. These are the new guidelines, the testing guidelines that have been issued by the ICMR. This is India battles the third wave. In fact, the same guidelines talk about lower hospitalization rates compared to the second wave. Hospitalization rate of 5 to 10% seen so far in the third wave, while in the second wave, the official data that had noted the hospitalization went into the range of 20 to 23%. Now, while this is reassuring news, the government has warned that the situation remains dynamic and evolving, and the need for hospital care may change rapidly. It also shows that for every 100 cases of Delta hospitalization, there would be 125 to 250 hospitalizations in the present Omicron surge. A massive spike of over 179,000 cases was recorded on Monday morning, and all states and union territories have been asked to keep a daily watch on the number of oxygen beds, ICU beds, and those on ventilator support that are being utilized. In fact, what's more worrying at the moment is the R factor. Current wave is very high in some states in comparison to the first and the second waves, and especially in pole-bound states like Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Goa, higher than the states like Delhi and Mumbai, which is reporting the largest number of cases so far. The R value, or the reproduction number, measures the contagiousness of the disease in terms of the mean number of individuals who will get infected by a single infected person. So if the R value is 2, then on average one person infects 2 others. And talking about that, in India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, this is even more worrying as UP has amongst the lowest vaccination rates in all of India. Only 34% of the total population has been vaccinated, and the state is heading to polls in a month. The UP Health Minister has admitted to NDTV that poll rallies add to the surge.
But would these meetings and events, did they contribute to the surge?
No, when you are in a huge gathering, it does contribute to that. Any huge gathering, you have somebody who is a COVID positive patient will, because being highly transmissible, this variant is going to be cutting across everywhere and trying to infect as much as people. But also what I would like to put in one word is that in 2020, 2021, what I saw was in the villages, there wasn't so much of a number of cases that were coming out, or much less in villages than what it came out in the big cities. This is what I've noticed this time also. This highly transmittable thing, we are looking at all the numbers in all the big cities. And when I come down to all the smallest districts, and there the numbers are isolated and not in very large numbers, and which are easily manageable also. So maybe, there may be a herd immunity or something like that, because you have Delta variant as well as you have Omicron. Both are probably having the same sort of characteristics.
And staying with UP, which is seeing acceleration in numbers, but targeted acceleration in vaccines as well, just a month ahead of polls. It is racing to vaccinate. 34% of total UP population is currently vaccinated against the opposition leaders. Also, as of this moment, talking about overcrowding, but like we said, a true area of concern here remains to be the low number of vaccination overall in the state.
Booster doses being administered across India's most populous state. But with just a month to go before the crucial state election, UP's big headache is increasing overall vaccinations. It is now racing to fully vaccinate as many adults as possible. Currently, this rate is among the lowest in the country, just 34% of the total population. But apart from booster doses, Uttar Pradesh's big challenge is to up the number of fully vaccinated people in the state, which currently is about 53% of all eligible people. And that's a low number for a big state like UP. So I have this queue here of people who've come in to get their second doses. आपका नाम क्या है भैया?
इंद्रपाल।
आपका?
सर्विस।
अच्छा, इधर आ जाइए आप लोग। ये बताइए कि आप लोग को दूसरी डोज कब लगनी थी और आज कितना लेट हो गया आपको?
सर 3 महीना लेट है।
3 महीना। और आपको?
वही तो लगनी थी 10 को।
23-10 को लगना था, जनवरी में आ रहे हैं।
हाँ, दो महीना समझ 1.5 महीना।
2 महीना। क्यों सर इतना लेट हो गया आपको?
जी सर, पर्ची गायब हो गई थी मेरी।
पर्ची गायब हो गई?
हाँ सर।
तो आप तो आधार कार्ड के साथ भी आ सकते थे, आपको मालूम नहीं था?
नहीं सर, मालूम
नहीं मालूम था।
की ढूंढ रहे थे हम लोग।
The big worry is political crowds. This one at the residence of Congress leader Imran Masood in Saharanpur today, where he announced a switch to the Samajwadi Party, resulted in a police FIR over COVID protocol violation. The current daily average doses in UP is 15.92 lakh doses, compared to 12.21 lakh doses 2 weeks ago. The vaccination challenge is greater in UP's rural districts, like eastern UP's Balia.
जनपद बलिया अभी वैक्सीनेशन की स्पीड में काफ़ी पीछे है। 73% के आसपास की पॉपुलेशन को हम फर्स्ट डोज दे पाए हैं और ये उत्तर प्रदेश के 75वें स्थान पर है। हमारी कोशिश है कि 20 तारीख तक हम इसको टॉप 10 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स की सूची में शामिल करा पाएं। सेकेंड डोज लेने वालों की संख्या अपेक्षाकृत ज़्यादा हो रही है, कम नहीं हो रही फर्स्ट डोज की तुलना में। अगर हम देखें हमारे जनपद में रीज़न ये है कि फर्स्ट डोज जिन्होंने देर से लिया है उनको सेकेंड डोज के लिए थोड़ा वेट करना पड़ेगा। तो बहुत सारे लोगों को जनपद बलिया में फर्स्ट डोज देर से मिली है।
Balia is the last in UP's vaccination rankings and it is voting on the 3rd of March. With Karuna Sidhu in Balia and camera person Vineet Verma, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Maharashtra is once again the COVID hotspot, but the demand for oxygen is 80% less when compared to the previous wave of COVID, even though it's risen by 80 metric tons in the last 2 weeks. 21% of the COVID beds in Mumbai's government-private hospitals are currently full, but the COVID task force says that the demand for hospitalization and even ICU ventilator beds increases only after nearly 2 weeks of rising cases. So the coming weeks are important in terms of impact of this wave that, in fact, Omicron also will have.
This jumbo COVID center in Mumbai's Bandrakulla complex was empty on December 20th. Today, 37% of its beds are occupied. While only 6.32% patients amongst active cases are hospitalized, 21% of COVID beds in public and private hospitals have been taken up. Maharashtra saw a demand of about 2,000 metric tons of oxygen daily at the peak of the second wave. Now the state is seeing a demand of 300 metric tons daily, a jump of 80 metric tons in 3 weeks alone. While the demand for oxygen is up by 30%, the situation is still not as bad as the second wave, as the oxygen demand then with the same number of patients was much higher and the jump in the demand of oxygen was much quicker.
आज के दिन में हमारे पास 900 प्लस पेशेंट ऑन बोर्ड है, उसमें से एक भी पेशेंट आईसीयू की फिलहाल तो आज तक ज़रूरत नहीं है और उसमें से 200 से 250 जो पेशेंट है उनको O2 बेड पे डाला है, बट सारे मेंटेन्ड है, कोई बैड कंडीशन में नहीं है। नंबर बढ़ रहा है, प्रिकॉशन लेना ज़रूरी है, पर डरने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है। महानगर पालिका पूरी तरह सज्ज है।
However, the Maharashtra COVID task force says the number of patients admitted to hospitals increases after nearly 2 weeks of rapid growth in daily cases. So the coming weeks are important for the city and the state in terms of the impact of the third wave.
इस हफ्ते में शायद हमें समझेगा कि क्या हमारे ऑक्सीजन बेड्स और आईसीयू बेड्स की रिक्वायरमेंट बढ़ेगी या ऐसी ही रहेगी, क्योंकि करीब करीब 2 हफ्तों के बाद ही हम देखते हैं कि एडमिशन जो है बढ़ना चालू हो जाते हैं, तब तक एडमिशन बढ़ते नहीं हैं। तो हमें ये अगला हफ्ता जो है बहुत बारीकी से देखना पड़ेगा, डाटा उसका स्टडी करना पड़ेगा।
The number of patients has increased and so has the testing and COVID-related restrictions in the last 2 weeks, but more than 90% of COVID patients this time are asymptomatic. The government says they are prepared and there is no shortage of oxygen, medicines or beds, and the statistics are along predicted lines. In Mumbai with Pooja Bhardwaj, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
All right, switching our focus to all the political news now, and an update from Punjab, where actor Sonu Sood's sister Malvika Sood will contest the Punjab polls representing the Congress party. Punjab will vote in a single phase on 14th of February, remember, and the votes will be counted on the 10th of March. The actor, whose work during the COVID crisis earned him rich praise, said that he supports his sister. Navjot Singh Sidhu was present at the joining in, said the Punjab entire unit is seeing this as a game changer ahead of the polls. Now, Ms. Sood joined the party in presence of the Chief Minister Chiranjeet Singh Channi and Mr. Sidhu. And Mr. Sidhu himself recognized that it is very rare that a party chief and Chief Minister both have gone to someone's home to grant the honour, and that she deserves it. A rare sighting indeed over there. Now, referring to Malvika Sood's joining the Congress, Sidhu also said, in the cricketing world, it's called a game changer. She's a young, educated woman, and her education as a software engineer will help her in her life ahead. Switching tracks to Madhya Pradesh now, where government has said that a 2,000 crore project to set up a 108 feet tall statue of religious leader and philosopher Adi Shankara, Shankaracharya, and an international museum in the state will connect it to the rest of the world. Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan last week addressed a meeting of the Board of Trustees as well to discuss this project. Prominent saints were also attending this meeting. The opposition, meanwhile, the Congress party, has raised doubts on the project, said it will only discuss it once the funds have been allocated in the state budget. The state budget, which the party also pointed out, is in massive debts at the moment. The state has incurred, according to several reports, at the moment a debt of 2.5 lakh crore. And in that state, they are going ahead with this project, or at least propose to do so, that is going to cost 2,000 crores to the exchequer. Meanwhile, just yesterday we saw a rather comment made by the UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath saying when it comes to Uttar Pradesh, it is a fight between 80 and 20. NDTV raised this issue in our program Trending Tonight, where BJP leader Alok Vats offers a curious explanation of why these comments were made, also a breakup and the meaning behind what exactly is this 80 versus 20 comment made by Yogi Adityanath.
Yogi Adityanath's 80-20 formula for Uttar Pradesh, where on Doordarshan, in a conclave of Doordarshan, which is the state broadcaster run on the taxpayers' money, Yogi Adityanath says in Uttar Pradesh there is an 80-20 formula. 80% will be with us, 20% will be against us. Alok Vats, I want to begin by asking you, first of all, let me tell you what everybody thinks that this is. Everybody. So let's quickly pull up the graphics of the population of Uttar Pradesh according to the census. What does the census say? Right? So according to the census, the Hindu population in Uttar Pradesh is at 79.73%, very close to 80, right? As mentioned by Yogi Adityanath. Muslim population is at 19.26%. Christians are 0.18% and Sikh at 0.32%. Mr. Alok Vats, it is very clear what 80 versus 20 means. Whatever happened to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, please tell me this. Is 80% Sabka Saath?
Let me tell you, Sanket, this is a big misnomer that all channels and everybody is trying to relate to.
Sure.
It's not the Muslims that Yogi had talked about.
Then
I'll give you the detail of the 20%.
Are you
this 20%. Just please let me speak, Supriya. The 20% consists 9% are criminals and antisocial elements. 3.5% are land grabbers. 2% are people who do atrocities on women. Then you have people who are pro-Pakistan, they are 2%.
No, one moment. Where are you getting this data from? Mr. Vats, where is this data on people supporting Pakistan? 2%.
Let me
What is this NCRB data? My goodness.
गजब है भाई.
Can I please be told, Mr. Vats? First of all, I want to know where is this data coming from?
I will give you where is the data.
No. I need it. You tell me the source. I will Google it. Where is this data from that 2% of Uttar Pradesh supports Pakistan?
They are 1.5%. These people consist of that 20%. You go and find out in the survey.
Mr. Vats,
can I please
one more? I want to understand this with all seriousness. Mr. Vats, I want to understand. When you say that 2% of Uttar Pradesh supports Pakistan, where there are, what was the breakup again?
Jinnah and Pakistan.
No, where what study is this? Who has conducted this study?
This is a social study. Social living in the society.
Where?
You can make out
social study, भैया. कहाँ से
आया? Why are you laughing and relating it to Muslims? Where has he spelled out the word that he is against Muslims? When did he say that?
Okay, I will not, one moment. On this program, I will not link this to the population of Muslims in Uttar Pradesh.
You should not.
I will go by what you are saying. Can you produce this paper? This fact, Supriya Shinate.
This is my homework. This is my one sec. This is my homework in the social field.
अच्छा.
No.
आलोक जी, मुझे पहली बार आपके साथ डिबेट करके इतनी हंसी आ रही है. एक वो होता है ना बच्चे के एग्जाम में जैसे क्वेश्चन आ जाता है.
हंसी आएगी तो आपकी सेहत अच्छी रहेगी.
अच्छा,
no, come on, this cannot be taken lightly. My point is, a chief minister of Uttar Pradesh has gone on television, which is owned by the taxpayer of this country, where he says that this election is 80 versus 20. You are saying that this constitutes anti-social elements 2%, pro-Pakistan people 2%. What study is this? If this is not population, then what study is this?
This is a social study in the field.
No, sir. These are general statements. Social study in the field means nothing. You give me
not heard of
Supriya Shinate and then Ghanshyam Tiwari. Ghanshyam, welcome. Spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party is also with us. Supriya, this is social study.
Yeah.
According to Mr. Alok Vats. What, where, when, how? We don't know.
It's a social study that he's done in his mind over a cup of tea that he had this morning. That's the kind of social study that the BJP does, because they don't believe in data, they don't believe in studies, they don't believe in research papers, they don't believe in academicians. Alok ji, मैं आपको बीच में नहीं बोली थी.
No, one by one. Mr. Vats, please, one moment. You have spoken. You have told us about the social study. Now we have to move on.
People sitting in air-conditioned offices.
I have just a simple thing. अरे आलोक जी, अब शांत हो जाइए आलोक जी. According to Alok Vats and his study, quote unquote, 48 lakh people in this country, in this state of Uttar Pradesh, the state that you and I belong to and Ghanshyam Tiwari belongs to, in this state of Uttar Pradesh, 48 lakh people are pro-Pakistan. अरे कहाँ से ये figures लाते हैं? The reality is that Yogi Adityanath has nothing to show as far as the 5-year governance is concerned. He's borrowing.
Do you want me to give you his achievement?
बीच में मत बोलिए. आलोक वत्स जी, प्लीज बीच में मत बोलिए. आपसे आग्रह है, थोड़ा सा तमीज से बात करिए. 2 मिनट मत बोलिए. He is borrowing roads from America, pulls from West Bengal, dams from Andhra Pradesh, China का एयरपोर्ट दिखाते हैं, फिर वो अब्बाजान करते हैं, फिर वो कब्रिस्तान करते हैं. उनके साथ के लोग तो शामी को क्रिकेट मैच के लिए भी नहीं छोड़ते हैं. ऐसे लोगों को आप अपने साथ लेके चलते हैं. आपके पास कुछ दिखाने को नहीं है, और अब आप सिर्फ नाम बदलने के बाद, आपने क्या किया 5 साल? नाम बदला जगहों का, और सबको पता है किन जगहों का आपने नाम बदला. और अब आप यहां पर आकर 80-20 करिएगा. अरे कुछ तो शर्म करिए. जिस संविधान की शपथ लेकर आप मुख्यमंत्री बने हैं, वो आपको दिखाता है कि आप यहाँ के 24 से 25 करोड़ उत्तर प्रदेश के लोगों के मुख्यमंत्री हैं. आप जब इतनी घटिया गंदी बातें 80-20 करते हैं, एंड फॉरगेट अबाउट दूरदर्शन और एनीवेयर एल्स, he should be ashamed to say this as an elected chief minister.
No need to test if you're asymptomatic, not even if you're traveling domestic. No need to test if you have even come in contact with a positive patient. No need to test unless you're traveling from an international nation, basically until you are a high-risk person. Somebody who's older and who has comorbidities, there is no need to test for COVID. These guidelines have come from ICMR, this as India is battling a third wave. Now, a lot has been said about these testings, a lot of comparison being made to international standards here as well. So let's break it open with our guests this morning. Joining us now is Dr. Ravindra Mehta. He's the Chief of Pulmonology and Critical Care at Apollo Hospitals in Bangalore. Thank you so much for joining this morning, Dr. Mehta. And also with us is Dr. Amitabh Yadhuvanshi, Senior Cardiologist at PSRI Hospital. Dr. Mehta, if I can come to you first, your first reaction to the ICMR guidelines that have actually said that there is no need to test. And while we understand that internationally the norms are something on the similar lines, but that's mostly because they have run out of testing kits and their testing capacity. India, far from it, from what we are hearing at the moment. Your thoughts?
So it's very intriguing why this has come out, but one can speculate and imagine the few reasons why this is happening. First of all, it's in the community, and it's widespread. We know that because Omicron has 1.5 to 3 times more infected compared to Delta. So the issue is that if we start testing at that aggressive rate we were trying to do before, then obviously there's all sorts of repercussions. We have to manage the test reports. We need a lot of consultations. At the same time, it's not impacting on the therapeutics. Most of these are quite mild. The second is the shortage of test kits. It's inevitable. The US is going through it. Yesterday, US hit a 1.1 million case load. So everyone's going through a shortage of test kits. So the ones who actually require it are not going to get it in time, and they are getting delayed. So if you want to focus on treating the right people, they should have the tests available in a certain amount of time, which is going to be impactful, and that may not be happening also. So maybe very futuristic, so as to say, but it's intriguing. We'll have to see how it pans out. However, it lays one basic question which comes up. Our 3T strategy, test, track and treat, is gone now. No longer are we going to be looking at the fact that we're going to catch people, isolate them and look at the spread of disease. We probably are now accepting in some way that community transmission is here. Focus your reserves and your resources on the right people, have the right strategies, and keep the hospitalization and severe disease in check rather than look for every asymptomatic people moving in the community.
My worry is, how will you define right people? And who gets priority? And are we going to miss some people in this process as well? That's the worry here, especially with a population of our size. Let me go to Dr. Yadhuvanshi on that. Dr. Yadhuvanshi, speaking to a lot of doctors, even yesterday, the sense that I got was that in hospitals where cluster after cluster of nursing staff, of doctors in COVID care, outside COVID care are testing positive, this has been a strategy which they believe will help them at least get the staff on board. As long as they say you're wearing an N95, it will help the functioning of the hospitals at least. But there I understand. Enforcing this throughout the country, how is that making sense?
Well, Sonal, the issue is whenever we do a test, the idea is what actionable intelligence we get once we get the test. So if we do a test in an asymptomatic person who may have come into contact with a COVID patient, if he is negative, then also that doesn't absolve him, because he may get infected the next day, because if one of his family members or is living with that same patient, then he will get it. And if he is positive, then also the treatment option doesn't change, because he will not be given any treatment because of the very fact that he is asymptomatic.
But that's always been the case.
Yeah, so but now, as Dr. Mehta said, now we have reached a stage where community transmission is there, where this identify, isolate and confine probably would not work, and we have reached beyond that stage where we cannot do contact tracing and we cannot confine or we cannot kind of squeeze the infection. It is already in the wild. So we have to now look into the other metrics which are more important. What are the number of hospitalizations, how many patients are requiring oxygenation, how many patients are requiring ventilator, because that is the more important metrics right now. Just knowing the number of infected patients, whether they are asymptomatic or symptomatic, would really not make any difference into the management of the epidemic as of now. It will just add to the numbers. And we all know, like with 20-30% positivity that is coming for the test, these numbers, and it's anybody's guess that like a joke is going on, you are either COVID positive or you have not tested it. So that is how things are. So if you are asymptomatic and if then you have to have COVID appropriate behaviors, everybody. So it is like in bloodborne infections, we used to say something called as universal precaution. The same thing needs to be applied to this where airborne infection. So anybody who is coming to the hospital or anybody whom you are in close contact with and whom you don't know the history about, you should presume that that person is infected, and you should take all precautions to prevent infection from transmitting from that person to you. So that is how things are as of now. So I believe testing asymptomatic really would not, will only stress the resources and would not really.
No, I get the bit about testing asymptomatic, but not testing those in contact with positive patients. That's the worrying bit over here. But Dr. Mehta, can I just lay this out on the table for all our viewers as well? When the government says and the ICMR guideline says that unless you are an at-risk patient, can you define an at-risk patient? Some people who should not be taking this lightly, who should definitely get tested. If you could just get that list for us, please.
Important thing. At the end of the day, we have to figure out why, right? And where are we in our country? What is our policy and what are we doing? So we are not part of a China policy. We have a zero tolerance policy that we take a city of 1.4 million, lock them down and test everybody. We're not doing that. We are looking at this at-risk population, and that goes back to 1.5 years when we realized that that population is people above 60, people with comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, chronic liver disease, chronic kidney disease, cancer, chemotherapy, immune system being down, chronic lung disease, and so on. So this list is available everywhere, but by and large, it's so simple. If I'm above 60 or I have enough of these disorders which have made me seek medical care for a while, then I come in the category of people who may get worse because of COVID-19 and this particular Omicron variant. So that is now the coned down population who has been identified as the ones we can test. It makes a lot of sense from a very futuristic point of view, and it's a very interesting exercise because we've gone very quick this time. If you just dial the clock back 4 to 6 weeks ago, we were trying to put every person who was even slightly symptomatic with suspected Omicron into a hospital. And in 4 to 6 weeks, we've got a diametric change of policy where we are now saying that, you know what, let's stop this. Let's focus on the severe subset. Let's save our resources. There's only so much because we have to ride out the next 2 months in a logical way. Thirdly, from a long-term perspective, we're probably laying the ground for less worry and converting into an endemic attitude. It's like flu. Sonal, if you get flu, you're not going to sit and worry about it. So tomorrow we may, 3 months, 6 months down the line, declare that vaccinated people, mild COVID-19, no comorbidities. Let's not even talk about it.
I absolutely agree with you, Dr. Mehta, but WHO in one statement after the other, and if we are taking them as an authority on, when it comes to a pandemic situation like this, go on to say that it is not flu-like. They go on to say it is not mild, it is milder compared to Delta. So what you're hearing from WHO versus what you're hearing from your own government is at a bit of a contrast over here. Dr. Amitabh, if I can come back to you. A lot of people have said that this is just number management ahead of polls as well. This is to bring down the numbers. I understand the sentiment might be different when it comes to actual looking at, and it's interesting how Dr. Mehta also says that we've had a dynamic shift in the policy and the outlook with which we're looking at the entire situation in a matter of weeks. In a matter of weeks, we have election as well. I'm not asking you to take a political stand over here, but just to get a sense of it, have you seen such sudden change happen earlier? Ever?
No, Sonal, I would in fact say that our government and our health agencies have been quite proactive all along the epidemic. Even in the last 2 years, there have been dynamic changes in the policies and matters as and when the situation arises. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why India has fared much better as compared to maybe US or UK, where the epidemic is still causing a lot of havoc. So I think it is not something that should be politicized or thought otherwise. I think the fact of the matter is we have to change the policy, or we have to change the focus at least on patients who are getting sick, who are prone to get sick, so that the resources are utilized properly. Because last time you may remember there were instances where people were not getting an COVID-19 test for days together. People used to fleece the patients in the name of getting a COVID test done.
No, but that situation is past. We are beyond that. We know our testing capacity. Now we're not facing same situation at all. But last closing comment, Dr. Mehta, then are we to conclude from this that no young person is at risk right now? This is essentially saying that this is government concluding that unless you're old, unless you have a comorbidity, unless you are under treatment for a serious ailment, you're not at risk, so you're fine.
So I think the final word on this is still not done, Sonal. Your questions are very important, and from a very primordial safety point of view, especially parents, it's not easy to tell people don't test at all, they want to know. The message given out is that the young people are at lesser risk. There is no zero risk. So policy change has to be very clear. It is based on the larger picture of a panoramic view. What are we going to do down the line? How are we saving our resources and so on? Rather than giving people a blanket consent that this is what you do and this is what's going to be okay. The second thing is one thing which I would like to put in front of you is that if they get sick, whether or not they test, they hit our hospital. We saw that in Delta. And so that is the only field safe we have right now. They're not hitting our hospitals. Still, the numbers are very, very low. And with mature home isolation, we're still keeping them at home. So that is one thing which will break through any policy. If this disease goes to the next level, we will come in. Thirdly, even if you test a young people, they don't require any therapy at this point. It's just observation. So with this, we have to still examine the full implications of the ICMR policy. But by and large, there is a lot of merit in what is being done from a futuristic point of view.
I see. All right. So don't just blindly think that this means that all young people are safe from Omicron. Also, don't get complacent about not testing and not reporting, especially the older people in your homes. That's absolutely essential. And then just go ahead with your COVID protocols. Nonetheless, as the doctors are also saying, assume that the person next to you is asymptomatic and work accordingly. Thanks so much for your time this morning. All right, let's look at the latest in politics now. We are weeks ahead of the polls coming in key states, something seen as a semi-final as we look at it in terms of the upcoming polls as well. Now, in view of the increasing number of corona cases, the Election Commission has now banned all parties from campaigning on ground till 15th of January. The parties can only do digital campaigning now. So are the parties prepared? Who are the first movers on this? Saurabh Shukla decodes from UP.
A shift from physical rallies, banned for a week amid the COVID surge by the Election Commission, to virtual ones. The incumbent BJP says its social media presence is stronger than ever. Ahead of the crucial state elections starting in a month, just what is the digital planning of BJP? A war room to coordinate with a social media team of 6,500 people. Over 1 lakh WhatsApp groups at every polling booth, installation of 9 lakh LED screens, 4 high-tech studios ready for virtual rallies.
आज भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पास सोशल मीडिया का एक स्ट्रॉन्ग नेटवर्क है, जिससे आज अखिलेश यादव जी लगातार डर रहे हैं। जिन्होंने वर्ष भर कभी तैयारी नहीं की, वो आज परीक्षा के काल में डर रहे हैं। भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यकर्ता पूरी तरह से तैयार हैं। निर्वाचन आयोग की जो भी सिफारिशें हैं, हम उसका अक्षरशः पालन करने के लिए तैयार हैं।
But in a tweet, a senior leader of Akhilesh Yadav's Samajwadi Party, the BJP's main challenger, indirectly accused the Election Commission of bias. But the Samajwadi Party is also trying to reach to more people on social media through their Akhilesh is Coming campaign. Links of Akhilesh's speak to be shared on social media. The formation of the socialist digital wing, creating WhatsApp groups at booth level. The Congress appears ahead of Samajwadi Party in digital campaign. Priyanka Gandhi is constantly interacting with voters through Facebook, especially with their Ladki Hoon, Lad Sakti Hoon campaign. In addition, Congress will install LED screens in all blocks of Uttar Pradesh. Girls Dance Challenge will be started on Instagram. 75,000 WhatsApp groups of Congress have been created.
तरीके से मैराथन आपने देखी होंगी मुरादाबाद, झांसी, लखनऊ में सुपर हिट रही। तो उनको हमको बंद करना पड़ा कोविड गाइडलाइंस के चलते। लेकिन अब हम डिजिटल मैराथन के जरिए गली गली कांग्रेस जैसे कुछ हमने डिजिटल कार्यक्रम तैयार किए हैं जो हम आगे आने वाले दिनों में शुरू करने वाले हैं। डिजिटल रैलीज के थ्रू प्रियंका जी पूरे प्रदेश के कार्यकर्ताओं को, उस जगह के स्थानीय नागरिकों को, मतदाताओं को एड्रेस कर पाएंगे।
The BSP seems to be last in their entire digital campaign. The party has not launched any special digital campaign yet.
हमारे जो रिसोर्सेज हैं, लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज हैं, उस लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज के तहत में हम कैसे अपने जो हमारी ऑडियंस है, जिनके पास हम पहले घूम करके फिजिकली जा चुके हैं, लेकिन हम लोग उनके पास कैसे डिजिटल मोड से और आईटी का इस्तेमाल करते हुए पहुंचे, इसकी हमारी प्लानिंग चल रही है।
On 15th of January, Election Commission will review its decision, but due to rise in COVID cases, it seems that Election Commission will not change its decision. In Lucknow, with Bilal Saurabh Shukla for NDTV.
Moving on, days after an audio clip of a man abusing a bank employee went viral, Kotak Mahindra Bank has said it is looking to sue fintech BharatPay's founder Ashneer Grover for using inappropriate language in a call with a bank employee. Here's what happened.
BharatPay's Ashneer Grover and his wife Madhuri Grover in a legal notice stated that Kotak Mahindra Bank went back on their deal to get them shares worth rupees 500 crore in Nykaa's initial public offering. While Kotak Mahindra Bank responded saying it is looking at all legal options against Mr. Grover for using inappropriate and abusive language in a call with a Kotak Mahindra Bank relationship manager, last week an audio clip surfaced on social media where a couple purportedly speaking to what appears to be a relationship manager from a bank, and the male voice here hurls and abuses and the other male voice is heard pacifying him. While there's been no official response from BharatPay on this alleged inappropriate call so far, reports seem to suggest that Ashneer Grover deleted a tweet where he says this is a fake audio by some scamster trying to extort funds.
Now to Nagaland, where hundreds of Nagas began a two-day walkathon on Monday to cover a 70-kilometer distance from Nagaland's commercial hub to the state capital. They're demanding repeal of the Armed Forces Special Power Act, the justice for the 14 civilians who were killed by security forces in the Mon district in December. Today is the second day of the walkathon, and people were seen holding placards and banners against AFSPA and heard raising slogans seeking justice for those victims. The two-day walkathon was spearheaded by various Naga civil society organizations after a massive social media campaign for the past few weeks. The participation of walkathon would do the night halt as well, and they would continue to do this all the way to their destination.
It is a non-violent march. It was triggered by the Utting massacre. So we demand immediate justice for the Utting massacre victims. Adequate compensation has to be paid to the victims. The perpetrators, the guilty, has to be brought under charged under criminal procedure, brought under civil court, and also at the same time repealing of the Armed Forces Special Power Act.
This work was organized to repeal AFSPA, a draconian act that has caused more harm to people of this country. We are here to remind the government, both center and state, that we will not stop until justice is served to our Utting people.